Start out with are the two main rails that the front and the back legs connect to. The seat slats sit on, and basically everything starts with these pieces. They're probably the most important piece that I will make, so that's why I decided to start with them. After I cut the first angle, you can see me use a little block plane to try to square it up a little bit and even it out and make it nice and smooth, so everything connects to it and rests pretty flush with it when I start assembling everything. Here's a little time lapse of me cutting all the relief cuts for when I start using the coping saw. This makes it a little bit easier to kind of use the saw to cut down the line without wearing my arms out, and also making sure that I'm not wavering and staying close to the line. That way I have less file work to do once I finish it. This is a CAD model of the chair that I created using plans from Popular Mechanics. By doing this, I was able to create an accurate cut sheet as well as make sure all my little additions matched up and everything fit together nicely. I also used it in the video to kind of help illustrate what part of the chair I'm working on, and you can see here I'm starting to work on the seat slats. I'll start by taking a hand plane and planing down an angle. That way everything matches up together and sits flush, and you don't have sharp corners jutting into the backs of your legs. Now I'll move on to the bottom cross brace that holds onto the bottom of the seat slats. I'll start off by cutting out the tenons for the mortise and tenon joints that'll go into those rails that I cut out in the first part of the video. One particular aspect of this chair is I wanted to emphasize the use of hand tools. For example, I'm using a bit and brace with a Forstner bit to drill out the initial holes that will become the mortises of the mortise and tenon joints. Once I drilled out the bulk of the material from the mortises, I finished them off with my mallet and chisels. As you can see, I'm still fairly amateur when it comes to joinery, but I'm glad I took the extra step to do this instead of just screwing it on there, as I think it adds a nice touch, and structurally I think it improves it more than just screws alone. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the front legs. In order to make sure that the back angle sat flush with the ground, I measured the distance from the bottom of the seat assembly to the ground in the CAD model, and then cut out 2 pieces of plywood to match that distance as a way of temporarily holding up the seat assembly. Once the seat assembly was in place and all the angles matched up, I then clamped the legs onto the seat assembly and then started to drill out the holes for the dowels. One thing I wish I'd done differently was hand-turned walnut dowels instead of buying oak ones from Home Depot. I think the walnut would have been a nice contrast and would have been a lot easier to get the dowels in place, because the ones I bought from Home Depot were quite terribly warped and not exactly the spec. But after some hand sanding and some glue, I managed to get them tapped into place and then cut flush, and everything held together perfectly. I used the same process for the back legs as I did the front legs. After I cut the top angle off, I clamped them to the back of the seat assembly, made sure everything lined up, and then marked and drilled the holes for the screws. One of my favorite things to do is to incorporate slight bits of live edges into my projects as much as I can. And the piece I had cut out for the top support of the slats happened to have a nice little live edge corner where I had cut it down on the table saw. I did my best to preserve this by using the draw knife on the other side. That way, as you looked around the back of it, there was a nice touch of sapwood and bark, as opposed to the nice hardwood of the rest of the chair. Here I start on one of the last large steps of the Adirondack chair, which was the armrests. last steps were to simply cut the back slats off at an angle so you had that nice rounded look on the back. After that, all it was to screw them into the rest of the assembly, and I had finally finished the chair.